525,600 minutes, 525,000 moments so dear, 525,600 minutes. How do you measure a year?
There's a very powerful chapter that certainly is evocative of the special relationship that you had with your mom, and that's Saviors and Angels. Could you explain a little bit why your mother had this profound sense in some way of your special role in the family as a savior?
Well, when I was a very small baby, we were driving home from my grandma's house. She lived downstate a little ways from where I grew up in Joliet, Illinois. And my brother and sister were also in the car. We were all asleep, and my mom and dad were in the car. And there was this group of young men that were bumping into, like, using their car to bump into other cars.
Yeah.
And it turned out, to make a long story short, it turned out that Mom and Dad managed to sort of get away from them, but Mom thought that because one time when they bumped into our car, my little baby head in my car seat fell forward, and that she saw the guy in the car see me, and then they kind of took off. Turned out later that all those guys had been knocking cars off the road and killing the people inside and stealing their cars, and that Mom always felt that because he saw me as a baby, he decided not to kill us.
Yeah.
He didn't want to kill any babies, which may be true, and maybe probably is true. I mean, I don't know. But it was a story that I heard from a pretty young age, and it seems to me that sort of did inform my mom's relationship to me to some degree. That I for her was a kind of a savior to the family. Of course, by no design. I mean, I was a baby.
Yeah.
But I know for myself, I mean, I know that story had an impact of like, oh, I do have some sort of responsibility here.
The other part of the story, as she told it, would be to talk about that you were able to use some of your income from adventures in babysitting to buy her a condo, and then when a tornado came through town,
that something like 60 people died, and two of the places we had lived, one was an apartment and one was a townhouse, were both destroyed. I mean, it wasn't by design, like I, came in and saved them directly. It was a byproduct of something that I'd done, which it just wasn't a conscious effort of like storming into a burning building and grabbing them and giving them mouth-to-mouth resuscitation or something.
This is maybe leaping ahead a bit, but I mean, it strikes me, of course, especially as you look at other narrative threads in the book, there's so many things that one could easily say from a spiritual perspective. You could go back and say in retrospect, this must have happened for a reason. This confluence of events, or this coming together with people, or the synergy. Does that make sense in terms of your own belief system, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. For me, the jury's out on all of it. It's interesting to me. It's sort of like, oh, isn't that interesting that these things kind of line up in this way? But I don't think that it's by any grand design necessarily, or that there's a higher power. I don't know. I mean, it's all, to me, that's all who knows, and I don't really feel the need to know definitively anything about that. And especially with regards to Rent being a part of all of this and a part of my life, it keeps sort of coming back in interesting circles, and keeps giving back and bringing people into my life. And who knows? I mean, who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. but aside from questions of grand design, I think it sounds like one of the profound truths that you did discover on some level is the notion that sometimes what seems at the time as totally negative experiences, the grieving process, some of the other things that you went through, there is a transformative aspect to that, and of course that seems to be central to the message of Rent itself.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, that's one of my little mini missions of writing the book, was to show all of it, and that, especially in our culture, there's so little room to kind of expose ourselves to the sort of darker sides of our nature, or the sadder experiences we have. I mean, there's always, it seems to be, there's a lot of thought given to like shielding people from pain. And of course, we don't want to cause pain, or want to cause as little pain as possible, but at the same time, pain is a part of life, and the more we can embrace that as being the case, the more we can grow from it, and the more free we'll be ultimately. So it was a mini mission of mine to acknowledge that and tell the whole truth about it as a way of hopefully liberating others. I mean, it certainly was liberating for me to write it, and it was very cathartic. It was also the most painful thing, one of the most painful things I've ever done, second to the loss of my mother in the first place.
Yeah, well, you were remarking, hopefully the next book will be something a little less intense, a little more lighthearted, right?
Yes, yeah. Although, knowing my nature, I probably won't be able to shy away from anything too deep, because it's just, writing a book is so hard that I wouldn't want to spend time on something that I didn't care passionately about, which is catch-22.
Well, moving the narrative forward a little bit in terms of your relationship with your mom, of course, the other aspect of your relationship that had this special aspect to it was your whole process of coming out to her. You identify as openly bisexual, but part of this process was, of course, introducing her to some of the male partners who were important in your life, and her understanding of what all this meant. Could you trace that path a little bit, and did that extend into the period of her illness? Were you still in some ways working through that and trying to help her have a better understanding of who you were in that sense?
Yes, I guess. The coming out story goes back to this early incident when I was 14, and I was found messing around with an older boy from my high school, and my mom confronted me. And so I didn't really come out to her. She kind of confronted me. Mm-hmm. And asked me about this, and I was very defiant. And but then after that happened, I kind of took a little. The deeper part of me went, "Okay, you careful. You better stop this, because it's not going well with your mom." That was, I guess, what I sort of think of as, in retrospect, as sort of my closet. Yeah. My closeted period. I didn't think in terms of labels then. I don't remember thinking in terms of labels. But I've been around gay people, queer people since I was a little kid. But it wasn't until I went to NYU, where I went for one semester only. But during that semester, it was sort of my first real. I had my first real boyfriend, and it was at that time, a couple months into that I called Mom from New York, and I talked to her and more explicitly about my relationship.
525,600 minutes, 525,000 moments so dear, 525,600 minutes.